constitutional reform is quintessentially something that can only proceed if there is consensus. The structure of our Constitution necessitates that because there are many provisions in it which cannot be changed, cannot be reformed, unless it has the support of the government and the opposition. Furthermore, those things which not only require a parliamentary consensus, but an affirmative vote by the people in a referendum, of necessity would be assisted by there being consensus between the government and the opposition on those things. Absent such consensus, it would become very difficult for a referendum to proceed in a way which would be consistent with the idea of Jamaica moving forward together with a common sense of direction on this matter. The minister has come here today to make a statement. In her written text, though she didn't say it orally, there is this comment: "It is regretful, to put it mildly, that the leader of the opposition did not see it fit to utilize the medium of the CRC through his nominees to express any other view he wished to be considered on how the vote should be taken." The statement, which was issued to the media by the party, was a statement issued under the hand, so to speak, of the two members of our two representatives on the committee. It wasn't a statement issued by me. I saw the statement and I agreed with the statement, but it wasn't my statement. It was a statement of our two members. And it was necessitated because at the press conference held late last week, it was put out into the public domain that there was an agreed position in relation to a very fundamental issue, which is how the president is to be approved by Parliament, the choice of president. Now, we believe that any president must be somebody who has bipartisan support and the support of the wider public. That is fundamental because the role of the president includes being involved in making appointments to numerous sensitive posts. And that can often be contentious. And therefore, a president who has the support, the trust and confidence of the government and the opposition is very important. And the selection process must ensure that that is so. I think that is in the best interest of Jamaica. For us, the only way to achieve that is to ensure that the mechanism that exists in the Constitution that would prevent a resolution or a piece of legislation passing unless it has bipartisan support be employed. And that mechanism is that there should be a two-thirds majority in both houses. The structure of our Constitution is that no government has a two-thirds majority in the Senate. No government, whatever side forms the government at a particular point in time. And that is a very critical mechanism for ensuring consensus around certain important amendments to the Constitution, and in this instance, the appointment and approval of the President. The fact that the law says that the Prime Minister can appoint somebody having consulted with the Leader of the Opposition does not ensure consensus. There are instances, which I don't want to get into the specifics about necessarily now, but there are instances where persons have been reappointed or appointed despite vociferous and reasoned objections by the Leader of the Opposition in relation to those appointments, arising from that consultation. So the mere fact of consultation doesn't assure consensus. The only thing that will assure consensus is a mechanism in the voting process that is designed to achieve consensus, and that will inform the minds of those who are the ones making the decisions that need to be approved in Parliament. In other words, the Prime Minister of the day and the Leader of the Opposition of the day. Knowing that consensus is required for parliamentary approval, it ensures that the Prime Minister of the day and the Leader of the Opposition of the day will arrive at consensus before it gets into Parliament. And that is why, for us, it is fundamental that a government, whether it be a JLP government or a PNP government, with a large enough majority in the lower house, cannot have their way unilaterally in deciding who the president is. If the minority in the parliament, the opposition of the day, do not agree or accept that person. And so that is a fundamental issue for us. Another fundamental issue for us is that we want full decolonization now. This process of constitutional reform must embrace not only the monarch of England ceasing to be our head of state and having a Jamaican head of state, but the monarch's court in London ceasing to be our final court of appeal. In fact, the latter issue is of more practical importance because it affects access to justice for the Jamaican people who cannot currently access the court in England because of financial constraints or because, in the case they want to go there to see their cases being heard in the appeal, they may need a visa which they don't have a right to, and is at the discretion or whim, so to speak, of the consular officers who adjudicate these things in the UK bureaucracy. So that for us is also a fundamental issue. I know that the minister has a particular timing in mind for moving forward, but I must say right here that unless and until we form agreement around these fundamental things, haste will only make waste. Haste will only make waste. Let us take the time to reach a consensus. Let us ensure the public as a whole understands what is going on. Thus far, the public has not been privy to the deliberations of the committee other than through the recent report in a press conference. And there is a lot of talk, consternation even, about the direction that the political class is taking this reform without the people's involvement. Part of the challenge with that, I believe, is that the historical road that was taken to bring us to this point isn't fully understood, even though it has been said in this Parliament before. But this is the culmination of a process involving bipartisan discussions and consensus building, which had been taking place from the 1990s. So that is where we're at now. There are certain agreed issues which has taken 2 to 3 decades to arrive at consensus. One issue which was not settled was the question of how the voting should take place on the presidency. We are in favor of doing it in a joint sitting. We have no problem with that. But the voting must preserve the need for consensus. And a 2/3 majority of the House sitting together, of the 84 persons, of which 2/3 is 56 persons, MPs and senators sitting together, is not a threshold which we would agree is sufficient for consensus. As it stands today, the government would be able to choose its own president without our consent to it. And who knows in the future what majorities particular governments may have. Let us agree. And the minister reported what Bruce Golding apparently said. I didn't hear it. But the reality is that the only mechanism that on the table for ensuring consensus is a voting system that will not allow a matter to go through without consensus. And any other system which doesn't have that in it, to my view, is naive. And we won't support a naive approach to this issue. We want an approach that ensures consensus, because that's what Jamaica deserves, and that's what is in the best interest of our country.